A hard day's lore diving ahead. Today, we deal with the numerous bad pirate impressions as we explore Pyke, the Blood Harbor Ripper. Welcome to Runeterra Tourist. I'm Patrick. I don't know anything about these people yet, so let's learn about them together. When the cards were first revealed, that whole Fury, Chaos, Gold Gear tokens, a signature spell that would prey on the weak and could get recursion after being in the trash, it felt like this was going to be a pretty difficult deck to deal with. And then I tried building one on my own and, well, it didn't quite work, to be honest with you. Released in May of 2018, Pyke is more of that assassin support. So technically a support played on the bottom lane, but he's built around killing or I guess stealing kills in certain aspects. He has stealth, dash, a stun, and an ultimate called Death from Below, which should sound familiar to Riftbound players, that executes enemies below a certain health threshold and gives gold to nearby allies. He's frequently banned at the higher levels because he's either oppressively dominant or difficult to deal with in the hands of somebody who actually knows the matchups. And so classic high skill ceiling, all around difficult to deal with. But how does he translate in Riftbound? Well, let's raise a glass of his favorite beverage, a glass of red wine with some salted seawater to find out. Oh god. Oh, I should not have done that. Oh man, that was a bad idea. Pyke was born in Bilgewater, starting on the slaughter docks, like many of the cities poor, where they would haul in sea monsters for rendering, getting paid in coppers while the captains collected gold. And Pyke noticed this specifically, this disparity between those who did the work and the men who took the coin. But he worked his way up and became this best harpoonist in Bilgewater, studying the Buru style of harpoon hunting that made him skilled enough that many captains would seek him out specifically. On one fated hunt, he finally encountered a jawfish, this massive sea predator with nasty big pointy teeth. Sorry, Monty Python. Anyway, and magical oils that were worth a fortune. And so without hesitation, Pyke dove in after it, determined to slay this legendary Leviathan. But rather than risk the ship, the captain, in a moment of panic, decided to sever the lifeline for Pyke. And whether it was the magic contained inside the jawfish itself or some other arcane entity deep in the ocean, he was brought back as something between the undead and a revenant. The exact mechanism, well, it's left a little vague, I mean, Riot being Riot, but suffice it to say, he clawed his way out of the abyss and returned to Bilgewater, hungry for vengeance. He started going through this list of the captain, the first mate, merchant, officers, bankers, even the caulkers, the people who mend ships, anyone associated with the bloody business of slaughter docks. He was attacking them, even the poor people who mend the ships, I suppose. At first, the killings went unnoticed. Just seemed like it was a day in the life of a Bilgewater resident, but after a while, people started to notice a trend. Before, when you would ask, are you a captain? It was kind of a mark of respect, but soon it became cause for alarm. And now I imagine Pyke players are sitting in front of their opponent in Riftbound and asking, you a captain? And then going about it. And maybe they're not as corny as I am, but anyway, the amount of bodies kept piling up, and eventually there was 1,000 Kraken bounty on the Blood Harbor Ripper, as he would be called. And Bilgewater, which was a city that prided itself on hunting monsters, now found itself with a monster hunting them. Now, an interesting note about Pyke is that he was a sailor aboard a ship called the Terror, and now he's just working through the crew manifest, basically. Except there's no record of the Terror ever existing. I mean, anyone in Bilgewater will tell you about these ships, but nobody had heard of this one. Also of note, the list continues to get longer. Names appear on it that weren't there before, but Pyke also doesn't even seem to notice. But something seems to be manipulating him, probably connected to whatever resurrected him, possibly the supernatural force in the jawfish or beyond. But it keeps adding names, keeps him killing, and keeps utilizing him as this weapon, something that he can't even perceive. He just has no idea. and he can't lie. Or at least that's what Riot said in their AMA when they were discussing him. He believes everything he says. The terror is real to him, the list is accurate to him, which is all fine and good, but it also is a man acting in total sincerity, yet it could be entirely fabricated. An interesting note is the similarities to another champion, Nautilus, and Riot was asked the question about this, the fact that there's very strong parallels between the two. I mean, Nautilus was a deep sea diver who drowned when his captain cut his lifeline and returned in a supernatural revenant seeking revenge. Kind of sounds familiar. They say that Runeterra's got room for 2 drowned men seeking revenge, and I mean, I suppose they're right. Nautilus became a force of nature, like barely conscious, pulling ships into the deep, all because of the tithe that they are due to pay the ocean. And Pyke is a different kind of supernatural entity, forming a murderous list and going off name by name kind of thing. It's different enough, I guess. I mean, they certainly look different. After all, according to Pyke, there's plenty of room for everyone at the bottom of the sea. He also appears as a major playable character in Ruin King, a League of Legends story, this 2021 RPG. And he's one of 6 playable characters that also receives one of the most extended characterizations outside of his biography. He's this paranoid creature, muttering names, seeing guilt in everyone, accusing people of these false accusations. It's quite an interesting angle. Now, in Legends of Runeterra, he uses this lurk mechanic, which is when you attack while he's on top of your deck, he lurks and transforms into Death from Below, this fast speed spell that summons him to strike the weakest enemy. And on level up, he strikes the weakest enemy after each kill, so it chains executions. This sort of follows the Bone Skewer Death from Below mechanics in League of Legends, with Pyke hurling this bone-carved harpoon at the target in the former and insta-killing his target in the latter. X marks the spot and all of that, assisting by tossing gold to his allies in the process. How nice. Riftbound takes a slightly different approach. Instead of lurking towards a single-use execution spell, he generates gold as his legend ability and recurs Death from Below from the trash. And the execution identity persists, the lurk architecture, it doesn't. So moving on to the cards, we start with the legend ability Pyke Blood Harbor Ripper, where you pay 1 energy and exhaust the legend card to return a friendly unit at a battlefield to its owner's hand, play a gold gear token exhausted, which has the reaction exhaust it, kill it, and get a power. So you basically see that direct correlation between the gold mechanism in League of Legends and this one in Riftbound, right? After he kills an enemy with Death from Below, he and his ally get to share gold. So pretty literal translation there. Just here, he keeps it all for himself. Very piratey, I guess. The return to hand mechanism, I guess, could be tied to stealth mechanics. You know, Pyke vanishes from situations when needed, and I guess that could be a play on his Ghost Water Dive ability, where he submerges into water and gets camouflage for a certain amount of time, only to reappear later. It's an interesting ability, and it has a clear identity, and he gets rewards by taking units in and out of combat and generating gold, so that's an interesting idea, except they have to survive the fight, so you have to pick and choose your battles a bit more. Meanwhile, his signature spell, Death from Below, is kinda nuts. 4 energy and 1 power, either Fury or Chaos, where you kill a unit at a battlefield. Then, if it had 3 might or less, you may play this from your trash for a power. So this is clearly named after his League of Legends ultimate, where in that one, Death from Below executes enemies that are below a health threshold and resets, allowing Pyke to use it again if the target dies. And so you get to chain executions on weakened targets. Riftbound's version captures the reset mechanic through trash recursion rather than some kind of cooldown. If the target was small enough at 3 might or less, the spell can come back from the trash for 1 power, which could be one of those fancy gold tokens you've been accumulating along the way. Now, of course, this could get defied because it's 4 energy and 1 power, so proceed with caution against green decks. The rare champion unit out of Chaos is Pyke Returned, a 3 energy cost 3 might unit that has Hidden, where you can hide it for 1 power to react with later for 0 energy cost. It has backline, so it must be assigned combat damage last, and once each turn when an enemy unit dies while I'm at a battlefield, play a gold gear token exhausted. So Hidden is kind of that stealth aspect, backline is him staying out of the direct damage range, and the gold generation on enemy deaths is that kill share identity that he's selfishly keeping to himself. It's interesting they don't let him share with allies. Anyway, so in practice, this card is difficult to put into play because it just requires so much setup, right? He goes into combat, even though he's got backline, so there's a greater chance that he could survive the combat. He still has to survive the combat, and then there has to be enough enemies that die that make it worth it so that he collects gold. It just feels really reactive and a little difficult to pull off, so probably not going to see much play. The epic champion unit out of Fury, on the other hand, probably will see a lot of play. This is Pyke Dockside Butcher, a 3 energy cost 2 might unit that also has Hidden, but also has ganking, so it can move from battlefield to battlefield, and the ability where you may pay 1 Fury rune power as an additional cost to play me, and when you play me, if you pay the additional cost, ready me and give me 2 additional might this turn. The Hidden plus ganking abilities really give him the element of surprise, just appearing somewhere unexpectedly. The pay to burst ability kind of mirrors his Phantom Undertow ability from League of Legends, where he has this dashing stun that creates a ghost to return for a second hit. So I guess in Riftbound that is in the form of 2 additional might. And the fact that it enters ready if you pay the additional costs really adds to some great aggro synergies and possibilities. In the Rengar deck I'm trying to build, having him enter from Hidden, paying the additional cost, and then he comes in with the 2 additional might from his ability plus the 1 from Rengar's legend unit means that this is a 5 might unit that enters ready, which seems pretty bonkers. Just a great overall card for Fury in general, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm definitely trying to get multiple copies and probably putting this in every Fury deck that I have. So on the one hand, Legends of Runeterra had a really interesting idea of translating his League of Legends abilities into this lurk mechanic. The ability to be on top of a deck and lurking there, causing extra synergies. Whereas Riftbound, turning him into something that is a gold generating machine, being able to pull units off of the battlefield and having them suddenly reappear, especially with the addition of ambush mechanics in this set, seems to make him a pretty interesting build. Although I guess one could argue that the gold economy build would maybe work better with Nautilus. I mean, considering his backstory with the tithe to the sea, that's an argument for a later date. I'm sure depending on whenever Riot makes a Nautilus and if he ever gets released, we'll see then. So Pyke runs out of Fury and Chaos, red and purple, and his game plan seems to be to generate gold tokens through the legend ability and using Death from Below, having the gold to pay for that so it can hit additional times, or using the gold to hide units at battlefield so that they're not so easily targeted. But it seems like a very expensive build. Aside from seals, which are very expensive to purchase at the moment, let's hope that the release of Origins soon will bring that price down, please. But the gold tokens seem to be what also drives this engine, especially because so many of the cards tend to be pretty expensive, and like I said, in order to recur Death from Below, you need a lot of power. Because of this, his build feels a little clunky, right? I mean, when you generate the gold tokens, they enter exhausted, so you have to wait a whole turn to be able to use them, and his signature spell can easily be defied, which makes it really tough to utilize unless you're not playing against a green deck. On top of that, constantly bringing units into play and then bringing them out makes it really tough to control battlefields. You need a lot of units that have enter play effects, which there are a few, but also ambush seems to be really key But again, that can be really expensive to pay for all of these units and abilities. The Dockside Butcher unit will definitely see a lot of play in not just this deck, but any Fury deck, but it does make it interesting having a champion unit that would be in the champion zone have hidden abilities, where you know it's going to get played to a battlefield because you'll watch it go from the champion zone into the battlefield. So it kind of ruins the element of surprise. This was kind of the argument about Vi decks when the pre-ref was coming out about her champion unit having ambush, or Rengar for that matter too, where you can see it just looming, lurking, I guess. Okay, there's a little flavor there. But albeit, this kind of ruins the element of surprise. He finished just outside the top 64 in Sydney, finishing 74th place. And as of recording, since Vancouver has not happened yet, I know I record these well in advance, we don't really know how he's going to form in this meta. It looks like he can be somewhat of a competitive deck, but might have some trouble breaking through. And maybe we just haven't seen the optimized build of this deck yet. But have we seen its ceiling? It's tough to say. The lore is deliberately sparse. I mean, the question is whether that's a feature or a bug, right? The unreliable narrator element with the terror, the ever-expanding list, the possible eldritch entity that is manipulating him. It suggests that it's intentional, and it does make him a little bit intriguing of a champion. I suppose he works better as this ominous presence who is not this fully fleshed out character, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting having this added layer of someone who unquestionably believes the tricks that their mind are playing on them. The Nautilus parallels are quite something. I mean, Riot seems to believe that there's enough space in the sea for these two, but I kind of think that Pyke's is just way more interesting. Maybe they'll revise Nautilus's since they've been doing a lot of reworks in these lore lately. As for the cards, the gold mechanic is pretty direct to League of Legends, as is Death from Below, this sniping of unexpected units and being able to recur it multiple times. Having hidden and ganking on the Dockside Butcher unit is pretty nice. It seems like all of his stuff is very powerful, but not too overpowering or overwhelming. It seems like he's a very fun deck to pilot if you're into a different way of playing the game. You've got the gold mechanic and his ability to blink these units. Seems pretty fun. Just, I don't think he's found the right configuration yet, which makes him a little tricky to play. So Pyke's lore is ominous and deliberately vague, and I actually think that might work out for him. But for you League of Legends players, what do you think about his lore? And was there anything that I missed? And for all of those playing Riftbound, have you found this cracked version of his deck that you've been concocting? Let me know in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear. New episodes drop weekly, so be sure to subscribe if that sounds like your thing. But until next time, thanks for watching.